Daniel was Mark's closest friend and attorney, the man he trusted above all others. I recall how they laughed together, how effortlessly they synced, like brothers who had shared a lifetime of confidences. For a long time, I was just a woman in the background, Mark's wife, nothing more. That changed somewhere along the way, though I couldn't say when. Perhaps it was in the small moments. The way Daniel looked at me when Mark wasn't watching, or how his hand lingered a second too long when he brushed past me at dinner parties. I knew how he saw me, and worse, I knew I saw him the same way. But I was a married woman, Mark's wife, and Daniel was his best friend. So I did what any loyal wife would do. I buried those feelings. But Mark wasn't foolish. He had always been perceptive, always aware of the undercurrents in a room. I should have known he'd notice. He never confronted me about it, never let on that he suspected anything. But I saw the change in him. The way his smiles no longer reached his eyes, the way his touch became measured, calculated, as if he was testing whether I would pull away. He started watching me differently, watching us differently when Daniel was around. And then one day, he was just gone. A heart attack, they said. Sudden, unexpected. One moment, he was standing in our kitchen, reaching for his coffee, and the next, he was on the floor. I remember kneeling beside him, my hands shaking as I called his name. But he was already gone, just like that. The days that followed were a blur. People came and went, offering condolences, murmuring about how young he was, how tragic it all was. I nodded, thanked them, played my part. But inside, something twisted in me. Guilt. Not because of what I had done, but because of what I hadn't done. Because I had been waiting for something to happen. Waiting for something to justify the feelings I had buried. And now Mark was gone. Daniel was there, of course, always by my side, making the arrangements, handling the legal mess that came with Mark's passing. He was the only one who knew how much Mark had suspected. The only one who could look me in the eye and understand the weight of it. The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, my mind buzzing with thoughts I shouldn't have been thinking. And then there was a knock at the door. Daniel stood there, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. "You should get some rest," he said, but he didn't step away. Neither did I. I don't know which of us moved first. Maybe it was both of us at the same time. All I knew was that suddenly he was closer, his breath warm against my skin, his presence pressing in on me in a way that made it impossible to think of anything else. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. This was wrong. It was all wrong. But I didn't pull away, and neither did he. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us was thick, weighted with something unspoken, but undeniable. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven, and I knew Daniel could hear it too. He didn't touch me, not yet, but he was close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. Close enough that if I leaned forward just a fraction, I would cross a line that could never be uncrossed. I should have stepped back. I should have told him to go, to pretend this moment never happened. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, my body betraying me, my mind spinning with thoughts I didn't dare acknowledge. Daniel's eyes flickered over my face, searching, waiting for something. Permission, maybe, or the courage to stop himself. Then he exhaled, long and slow, and I felt his breath against my skin. "This isn't right," he murmured. But he didn't move away. I swallowed hard. "I know," Neither of us moved. Seconds stretched into something unbearable, something dangerous. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out every rational thought. My husband was dead. His funeral was tomorrow. And yet here I was, standing in the doorway of our bedroom with his best friend and lawyer, the one man he had trusted more than anyone in the world. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked away for a second, like he was trying to get himself under control. But when his eyes met mine again, I knew it was already too late. His fingers brushed against my wrist. Light, barely there, but it sent a jolt through me like the spark of a match against dry wood. "You need to rest," he said again. But it was softer this time, his voice rough around the edges. I almost laughed. Rest? How could I possibly rest when my entire body was buzzing with something I didn't have a name for? "Stay," I whispered. It was a mistake. The second the word left my lips, I saw it in his face. The shift, the loss of restraint. His hand tightened ever so slightly around my wrist, not enough to hold me there, but enough that I knew if I pulled away, he would let me go. I didn't pull away. Daniel stepped forward, closing the space between us inch by inch. His fingers skimmed up my arm, slow, deliberate, as if he was memorizing the feel of me. I shivered, but not from the cold. "You don't know what you're asking for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I did. I knew exactly what I was asking for. For weeks, maybe even months, I had been teetering on the edge of something I couldn't admit to myself. I had played the role of the grieving wife, the loyal partner even when I knew Mark had suspected. And now here I was, on the precipice of proving him right. Daniel's hands were on my arms now, sliding up to my shoulders, his touch heavier, more certain. I could feel the tension in him, the war waging inside his head. This was wrong. This was unforgivable. And yet neither of us could seem to stop. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered, his forehead resting against mine. I closed my eyes, swallowing down the guilt that threatened to claw its way up my throat. "Then leave." He didn't move. We were so close now that I could feel every breath he took, the rise and fall of his chest, the way his fingers trembled slightly as they curled around the back of my neck. My body responded on instinct, leaning into him, craving something I couldn't define. "Tell me to go," Daniel whispered, his lips just inches from mine. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Silence. Thick, deafening silence. Then, a sharp knock at the front door. I jolted back like I had been burned, my heart slamming against my ribs. Daniel's hands dropped away instantly, and he took a step back, his breathing uneven. We stared at each other, both of us caught in the haze of whatever had just almost happened. The knock came again, harder this time. Reality crashed back into me like a tidal wave. My husband was dead. His funeral was in the morning, and someone was at the door demanding my attention. Daniel ran a hand over his face, exhaling harshly. "I should go." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He hesitated just for a second, as if he was waiting for me to stop him. But I didn't. I couldn't. Without another word, he turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time, after the door closed behind him, my body still thrumming with the ghost of his touch. The funeral was tomorrow, and I had almost ruined everything. The funeral felt surreal, a blur of black clothing, muffled voices, and the overwhelming weight of loss pressing against my chest. People whispered condolences, some with genuine grief, others with rehearsed sympathy. I barely heard them. My mind was elsewhere, On the night before, on the moment I had almost crossed a line I could never uncross. Daniel stood near the casket, his expression unreadable. He had barely looked at me since this morning, and I knew why. What had almost happened between us still lingered in the air like a ghost, refusing to be ignored. I tried to focus, tried to mourn the man who had been my husband, the man I had loved once, even if I hadn't always been faithful in my heart. But my thoughts kept circling back to Daniel, to his touch, to how easy it would have been to let everything unravel. And then, as the priest spoke his final words, I felt it, a presence, a weight heavier than grief, settling in my chest, a feeling I couldn't shake. Someone was watching me. I turned my head slightly, scanning the crowd, and that's when I saw him. David, Mark's younger brother. He stood near the back, half hidden by the gathered mourners, his eyes locked on me. A chill ran down my spine. David had always been different from Mark, quieter, more observant. And right now, his gaze held something I couldn't quite decipher. Suspicion? Accusation? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look away. Maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe it was the guilt twisting in my gut, making me see things that weren't there. But the unease didn't fade. After the service, people trickled out, leaving me alone with Daniel. He stood by the grave, his hands in his pockets, his expression tight. I hesitated before stepping closer. "Daniel," I said softly. He tensed, but didn't look at me. "We shouldn't talk here." Something about the way he said it sent another shiver down my spine. "Then come by later." He hesitated, then gave a slight nod before walking away. That night, the house felt too big, too empty. Every room carried an echo of Mark, a reminder of the man who had once lived here, the man who had suspected me, the man who had died knowing something I hadn't wanted him to know. A knock at the door. I opened it without thinking, expecting Daniel. But it wasn't him. It was David. I froze, gripping the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "We need to talk." I didn't move. Every instinct told me to shut the door, to send him away. But the look in his eyes rooted me in place. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, moving with the kind of confidence that sent my nerves on edge. "I know," he said. The words sent a bolt of ice through me. "Know what?" David turned to face me fully, his expression eerily calm. "That you were having an affair." The room spun for a second. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my voice steady. "You don't know what you're talking about." He laughed, shaking his head. "Come on. Do you really think Mark didn't find out? He suspected you for months." My stomach twisted painfully. "That's not true." David's eyes darkened. "Oh, but it is. He came to me, told me he thought something was going on between you and Daniel. He didn't confront you because he wanted proof first." My knees nearly buckled. Mark had known. He had known. And he had died with that knowledge. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The night before he died, he called me." My breath caught. He told me he had finally found proof. A cold sweat broke out along my skin. "That's not possible," I whispered. David tilted his head, watching me like a predator watching its prey. "He was going to divorce you. He had already spoken to his lawyer, Daniel." The room suddenly felt suffocating. David leaned in slightly. And then, just hours later, he was dead. Something inside me cracked. Are you saying that it's a hell of a coincidence? David smirked. Yeah, I am. I shook my head. Mark had a heart attack. Did he? My pulse pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. David watched me carefully, then took a step back. You should be very careful. You know people are starting to ask questions. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? For the first time, his expression softened just a little. Right now? Nothing. But I'm watching you. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. I stood there, my entire body shaking. Mark had known. He had been gathering proof. He had planned to leave me. And then suddenly, he was dead. My stomach turned violently. Had it really been a heart attack? Or had someone made sure he never got the chance to expose the truth? A sharp knock at the door made me jolt. I spun around. Daniel stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Are you okay? He asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Because for the first time, a new thought took root in my mind. Had Daniel known? Had he helped Mark disappear? Or worse, had he done it himself? Did Mark really die of natural causes, or was there something more sinister at play? And if so, did Daniel have a hand in it? I should have walked away the second I felt the pull toward him. It was reckless, stupid, dangerous. But in the moment, I convinced myself it was harmless. A drink, a conversation, nothing more. But that was a lie. It started on a Friday night, one of those nights where everything felt off. My husband, Daniel, had left early for a business trip, and the house felt too quiet, too empty. So, when my best friend bailed on our dinner plans last minute, I found myself alone in a dimly lit bar, sipping a cocktail, pretending like I belonged there. And then I saw him, Ethan, tall, dark, and just the right amount of dangerous. He caught me looking, and instead of looking away, I held his gaze. It was like stepping too close to the edge of a cliff. You know you should back away, but something makes you lean forward instead. He came over, introduced himself, and before I knew it, we were talking and laughing. He was charming in a way Daniel hadn't been in years. Attentive. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just enjoying the attention. But then came the second drink, the third. The way his fingers brushed mine when he handed me a napkin. The heat in his gaze that made my breath hitch. Tell me you don't want this, he murmured, his voice low and smooth. I should have. I should have grabbed my purse, walked out, and never looked back. But instead, I let him pull me into a cab. The whole night was a blur of bad decisions, of whispered promises I never should have made. And when I woke up tangled in sheets that weren't mine, reality crashed down so hard it stole my breath. I left before he woke up, blocked his number, deleted every trace of him. It was a mistake. A single night I would bury and never speak of again. Or so I thought, because 2 nights later I got a text from him. You left too soon. We should talk. I ignored it. Another text, then another. And then the video, a short clip, the dark room, me, him. My stomach dropped. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. Then another message. I think we both know you don't want me to share this. My world tilted. I felt sick. He wasn't just some random guy I could forget. He wasn't letting me go. I stared at my phone, my breath shallow, my heartbeat hammering so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. The video played on a loop in my mind. The dim lighting, the way his hands were on me, The way I didn't push him away. I wanted to scream. How? How had he recorded it? When I had been so careful, hadn't I? A new message. You don't want your husband to see this, do you? My vision blurred with panic. I gripped my phone so tightly my fingers went numb. This couldn't be happening. I swallowed hard, forcing my shaking fingers to type. What do you want? The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I held my breath. Then, let's meet tonight. Same bar. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, this was insane. He was blackmailing me. But what choice did I have? If Daniel saw that video, if anyone saw it, my life would be over. So I did the only thing I could. I went. The bar looked different this time. Darker, colder. Or maybe it was just me. I spotted Ethan immediately. He was sitting in the same seat, his fingers lazily wrapped around a glass of whiskey. He looked up, and when his eyes met mine, he smiled. I wanted to slap that smug expression right off his face. Instead, I slid into the seat across from him, my entire body coiled with tension. You're insane, I whispered harshly. Ethan chuckled, taking a slow sip of his drink. I've been called worse. I gritted my teeth. Delete the video. He leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with something unreadable. That's not how this works, sweetheart. A cold chill ran down my spine. What do you want? I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan tilted his head, studying me like I was some kind of puzzle he was enjoying putting together. I want to see you again, he said simply. I stared at him. Are you serious? His smirk widened. Very? I shook my head. You're out of your mind. He shrugged. Maybe, but you don't have much of a choice, do you? I clenched my fists under the table. If you think you can control me, you're wrong. His smile didn't falter. I don't need to control you, Olivia. I just need you to cooperate. I felt like the walls were closing in. If I said no, would he send the video to Daniel? Would he leak it online? I had no way of knowing just how far he was willing to go. But something told me he'd go as far as he needed to. Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. Tomorrow night, my place. 7 o'clock. Wear something nice. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. And if I don't? He smiled slowly, dangerously. Then your husband gets a little surprise in his inbox. My stomach twisted into knots. I was trapped. I wanted to grab my drink and throw it in his face. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Not here. Not in front of all these people. Ethan stood up, tossing a few bills onto the table. Then he leaned in, his lips barely brushing my ear as he whispered, See you tomorrow, sweetheart. And then he was gone. I sat there frozen. I had just made the worst mistake of my life. And now it was only getting started. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, my hands gripping the bathroom sink so tightly my knuckles turned white. My stomach churned. 7 o'clock. That was less than an hour away. Ethan expected me to show up. And if I didn't, I closed my eyes. The image of Daniel, my husband, flashed in my mind. The way he smiled at me when he came home from work. The way he pulled me close at night, completely unaware that I was hiding the biggest betrayal of our marriage. If Ethan sent him the video, if he even got a hint of what I had done, I shuddered. I couldn't let that happen. My phone buzzed on the counter. I flinched. Ethan, don't be late, sweetheart. I swallowed hard. I had to go. I had to fix this before it spiraled even further out of control. So, against every instinct screaming at me to run, I got dressed, grabbed my car keys, and drove straight into the nightmare waiting for me. Ethan lived in a sleek high-rise apartment downtown. The kind of place with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture that looked like it had never actually been used. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor as I stepped inside. The door shut behind me with a quiet final click. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping a glass of red wine. He looked me over, his eyes lingering just long enough to make my skin crawl. "You look stunning," he said, his voice smooth as silk. I crossed my arms. "I'm here now. Delete the video." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, Olivia, you really don't understand how this works, do you?" I clenched my jaw. "You said you wanted to see me again. Fine. Here I am. But this is the last time. You'll delete everything, and we'll both move on with our lives." He studied me, swirling his wineglass absent-mindedly. "And what if I don't want to move on?" A cold chill ran down my spine. "You don't have a choice," I snapped. Ethan smirked. "I always have a choice." Something about the way he said it, so calm, so confident, made my skin prickle with unease. I took a slow step back, suddenly aware of how alone I was. Just me and him. And no one else knew I was here. Ethan set his wineglass down and stepped toward me. I instinctively moved back, but he caught my wrist. "You don't get it, Olivia," he murmured. "I don't just want another night with you." His grip tightened. "I want control." My pulse spiked. "Let go of me." His fingers flexed. Then finally, he released me. I exhaled shakily. "You're insane." Ethan smiled. "And you're trapped." I shook my head. "No, you're not going to ruin my life." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a few swipes, the screen lit up. The video paused, ready to send with the press of a button. "You sure about that?" My blood ran cold. "Think about it, sweetheart," he continued, voice dripping with amusement. "One little click and your husband's world shatters." Your world shatters. I couldn't breathe. I had no way out. Unless I forced my face to relax, softened my posture just enough to look resigned. Ethan noticed. He smirked. "Now you're starting to understand." I took a slow step forward. "Fine," I whispered. "But I need to know why me." Ethan's smirk faded slightly. He studied me as if trying to decide if the question was genuine. "I like breaking things," he murmured. "And you?" "You were too perfect, too untouchable." He reached up, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "I wanted to see what would happen when you finally fell." I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat. This man, he wasn't just a mistake. He was a predator, and I was his prey. But not anymore. My fingers tightened around the cool metal of the wineglass on the counter, and then I swung. The glass shattered against his temple. Ethan stumbled back, cursing, blood trickling down his face. His phone slipped from his fingers, landing on the floor. I lunged for it, his hand clamped onto my wrist mid-grab. "You bitch!" I twisted, kicking him hard in the stomach. He grunted, stumbling back again. My hand shot out. I grabbed his phone and bolted for the door. I nearly made it, but Ethan recovered faster than I expected. Fingers tangled in my hair, a sharp yank, pain. I screamed as he dragged me back, slamming me against the wall. "You think you can play games with me?" His voice was low, furious. I clawed at his arm, but his grip was like iron. I had one shot. I swung my knee up hard. Ethan doubled over, groaning. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed his phone and ran through the living room, down the hall, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I threw open the door and I froze. Standing in the dim hallway, his face unreadable, was Daniel, my husband. His eyes flicked from me to Ethan's bleeding figure in the doorway, then down to the phone clutched in my trembling hands. His gaze darkened. "Olivia," he said, voice terrifyingly calm. "Start talking." And just like that, everything fell apart.